What is the first Eddsworld video? Good question, difficult answer. ToonHive recently made a tweet celebrating Eddsworld's 21st birthday, referring specifically to the creation of Edd's Newgrounds page in 2003 and the animation that was uploaded on that same day. And then Tom decided to chip in. He argued that Eddsworld, as we know it, started a year and a half later with the first Christmas special, and he's not alone in thinking that. Matt is in agreement about the Christmas special being the first real Eddsworld video. Ed went on record saying the same thing, and as of 2 years ago, about a third of you lot agree. So let's have a bit of fun with this and go through some of the Eddsworld firsts. If you're new to this topic, then hopefully this is interesting, and if you're already clued in, then come along with me. You might learn something new, you might not, I sure have while making this video. Let's have some fun with this. So if we're being technical about things, Eddsworld existed in Ed's sketchbook long before he was animating any of it. By the time Ed By the time Matt and Ed met, he was already making a comic about his world, featuring some friends that would never be animated into the webtoon. We don't know when exactly he was doing these things, sketchbooks don't usually have upload dates, but it was definitely before any real animation took place. Why was it called Eddsworld? Blame Mike Myers. While these illustrations laid the foundation for Eddsworld as a concept, this tweet is referring specifically to an animation called Ed from 2003. It was made by Ed, starring him and Matt. It's got the famous bucket hat, and it has a plot about Ed wanting to blow up a school. According to the UN, that is a war crime. Ed is a war criminal. Heck, the animation is presented by Eddsworld, posted to a page of the same name on the day that page was created. This is, by all measures, an animated adaptation of those original physical Eddsworld illustrations. So why the discrepancy? Well, it doesn't really look or feel like Eddsworld. All the dialogue is done through on-screen text. It's not really a comedy, even though there are certainly lines that are meant to be comedic, and visually speaking, it's almost unrecognizable. It looks a lot more on par with the Bendee Stick animations that Ed was already working on. While we're trying to define what counts as Eddsworld, Bendee Stick is not Eddsworld. Very few people would argue otherwise. These videos are some of Ed's earliest surviving public creations. They were posted to Eddsworld pages outside of Newgrounds before any animations bore that name, but that's mostly by happenstance. Ed used to prefer the name Ed's Killathon for his websites, but after his Neopets Guild website was shut down, he repurposed the Eddsworld moniker for a website to host all of his little oddities. Bendee Stick was one of those oddities, but it was always a different project to the Eddsworld illustrations. The Legacy documentary does make the claim that the main character Bendee Stick was just Ed after being thrown into some radioactive waste, so you could argue that the shows feature the same main character. That might be true, but it's not all that relevant. Bendee 8 opens with a clip of Ed falling down a pit and emerging as Bendee Stick, and then in Bendee 9 he's wearing a green hoodie from the start. Also in Bendee 7, the kitchen is basically identical to the kitchen in some Eddsworld episodes. There may be more evidence, it's hard to know conclusively because the very earliest Bendee animations are still lost, but either way I'm not sure it particularly matters, for our purposes at least. Firstly, those animations are so fundamentally different from Eddsworld in style, presentation, and genre that you'd have a hard time convincing anybody that they represent the true start of Eddsworld. And secondly, Bendee and Ed are separate characters in various episodes. Bendee might have started as a self-insert of Ed, but by the time of the Christmas special, they were two different characters sharing the same world. And why don't we talk about that special, because that's what started this whole mess. The Christmas special shares a lot in common with Ed 2003. It is once again presented by Eddsworld, this time stylized as one word. It was created by Ed, starring himself, Tom, and Tord, although not all of their voice actors were finalized. It does separate itself from Ed 2003 in a few ways though. Obviously, it looks a lot more like Eddsworld. All of the character designs are basically there, and importantly, there was voice acting. There were animations before this with similar designs, notably Ed again was a big leap in creating the Eddsworld look, but the Christmas special was the first time Ed put voices to those designs. Not that Eddsworld videos need dialogue necessarily, but with that dialogue they were able to tell a story that is more on genre with Eddsworld than anything that came before. An earlier video like When the Best of the Worst Collide looks a lot like Eddsworld. It's got the characters and animation of the Christmas special, but it's an action cartoon. Same goes for Bendee Stick, which was inspired by secret agent stories, while Edd 2003 and Edd Again were slice-of-life cartoons with no real fantastical elements. The 2004 Christmas special, meanwhile, is a capital C comedy about the boys saving Christmas by delivering presents to the masses. The comedy, characters, continuity, and story are undoubtedly Eddsworld. So which video is the first? In the past, I've always seen Edd Again as the first real episode, but I can certainly be convinced otherwise. One argument that I find convincing is the pilot argument. While there are certainly internet shows and other creations that found their feet immediately, a lot of showrunners create what is called a pilot. These pilots represent what the show is going to be, and may set up an ongoing story arc before they get pitched to networks, and oftentimes they are noticeably different to the final product. Characters may not be fully developed, actors may be different, and very often with cartoons, the animation style might be slightly different to the finished product. This can be the result of network intervention, or it might come about through natural iteration in the creative process. Looking at these proto-Eddisodes, it could be argued that Edd 2003 and Edd Again were pilots to Eddsworld, glimpses into the characters and their worlds, like Edd and World, but with neither fully realised. The Christmas special, meanwhile, pretty much set the tone for the show going forward, and I have no qualms about calling it the first real Eddisode. Your mileage may vary, fight about it in the comments. With that conundrum out the way, there are plenty of other milestones to cover, like, for instance, what is the first video where all the characters are together for the first time? The four boys were all there by the Christmas special, but they didn't share the screen until Zombie Attack. That's also Matt's first appearance since Edd Again, so arguably his first canonical appearance. Apparently Matt was upset that Edd kept on killing him in stick animations, which is why he waited until Zombie Attack to write him fully into Eddsworld, right before killing him in that very same episode. So that's the characters, but what about the voice actors? Well, Edd and Tord were voiced by their own characters in the 2004 Christmas special, but Tom here was being voiced by Alex. Get on, Alex. Tom wasn't voiced by Thomas Rigewell until Zombie Attack, which was also Matt Hargreaves' first episode voicing Matt. I'm starting to wonder if Zombie Attack could also make the claim of being the first real Eddsworld video. That'd be quite fitting, I think. Thomas's last episode was The End Part 2, and he wasn't recast until The Beaster Bunny, where Ed Templar took on the role he still plays today. Edd Gould was also recast. His last episode was Spaceface Part 1. His voice was famously changed at the start of Part 2, introducing Tim Howdkeat into the role for the legacy. That being said, we did get a preview of his acting skills in Part 1 during that flash forward, making that episode his first real Eddsworld credit. Tim, too, had his last episode in The End Part 2, and George Gould has been voicing the character ever since casting call. And what about the house? Early on, the guys mostly lived in separate houses or apartment blocks, sometimes working at Eddsworld HQ where the animations were made. The Eddsworld house is the setting for the dudette next door in its first real appearance. Edd was still living there in episodes like Zombie Attack 2, but the boys weren't living together until Zombie Nation. That's also when Tom got his current design with the two black eyes instead of the Gary Larson unibrow thing. Other character design firsts include Tord getting his red hoodie in the dudette next door, while Matt's purple hoodie was gifted to him in Santa Claus 1. We're finally getting into the YouTube era, and I think it's about time we address that. The oldest video on Edd's YouTube channel is Tord's Adventure, uploaded 2 days after the channel's creation in 2006 and 1 day after that video was published to Newgrounds. Why did he wait until 2006 to create a channel? Why did he not publish all of his work up until then? No idea, the blogs don't go that far back. When do you think the Eddsworld jingle was first played at the start of an episode? When was the current logo first shown? A lot of the earliest episodes don't really have that, they don't have a title sequence, they just start. Well, the Eastwood font was used in the title of Zombie Attack 2 of all videos, but the actual logo didn't appear until Eddsworld 20k. The jingle only made its first appearance in Spares, and the modern intro with the outline started in Xmas Day, or potentially Hammer and Fail depending on how you want to count it. And finally, let's return to where it all began, the comics. The oldest comic on the Edd Vault is this one from Edd's prehistory called Eddsworld. I don't really know what's going on here. The next one is this famous one, part of the Best of the Worst series, and it is, by Edd's own admission, the first Eddsworld related comic he ever drew. But what does Eddsworld say? The Eddsworld website lists all of the numbered comics very handily, and the earliest comic they have isn't this one. The very first comic on the Eddsworld website, the first official Eddsworld Comics #1, is called Locker Room. You know, this video was a bad idea.